And good evening, everybody, and welcome once again to the Video Sports page. Tonight, it's edition number 1152 for your viewing pleasure. Along with Rich Goulart and Will McKinney, I'm your host, Carl Pratt. Glad you're along for the program, where the emphasis is on local sports. Now, during tonight's edition of our show, we'll have an extended interview with Friend Weiler. He's the one and only coach in the history of Duxbury girls varsity hockey. This coming Sunday, starting at 11 o'clock at the TD Garden, Duxbury will go up against Falmouth for the second year in a row for the state championship, but it'll be Duxbury's third straight appearance in the big game. They are back-to-back defending state champions. Also on our program tonight, I'll have another extended interview. It is with Kevin Paul DuPont. Kevin Paul DuPont is from the Boston Globe. He's been covering the Boston Bruins and the Red Sox for over 30 years, but he's known mostly for his hockey writing, and I had an opportunity to catch up with him a couple of weeks ago. But before we get into those interviews, let's quickly congratulate a couple of local wrestlers. One of those young wrestlers is Colin Hardy. He completed a terrific career for Plymouth South High School, helping to lead them to a 25-0 regular season, the South Sectional Championship. Kevin Hardy had 108 career victories. And how about a young man named Todd Bazarewski? Following his outstanding days as a wrestler for Plymouth South, he went on to prep school at Tabor Academy, did some wrestling there. He finished third in New England and was named an All-American wrestler. Congratulations to Todd Bazarewski. Let's talk quickly about high school basketball, where the word out of Plymouth North is head basketball coach on the boys' side, Phil Lewis, has resigned. The Eagles will be looking for a brand new head coach next winter. You're going to hear it here first. I think it may be Bob Fisher, who was once very, very successful at Rockland High School, then went on to Quincy, most recently at Marshfield. Word is he wants out of Marshfield, and you may see Bob Fisher roaming the sidelines at Plymouth North next year. All right, let's get into our program. State Championship, a very familiar setting for Duxbury girls varsity hockey. This coming Sunday at 11 o'clock, they'll have a face-off against Falmouth, a team they'll face for the third time this winter. Let's roll the interview I picked up with head coach Friend Weiler. Okay, let's continue with this week's edition of the Video Sports page. We're in the dressing room following the next to the last practice for the Duxbury Green Dragons girls varsity hockey team, the two-time defending state champs. But there's more business at hand. And here to share some of that enthusiasm and what's in store for the Lady Green Dragons is head coach Friend Weiler, and another practice, and this season's been going on for a while.
Absolutely. You know, we're down to the wire here. We got one more game ahead of us, and we're trying to, keep the girls focused and headed toward our ultimate goal.
Well, let's talk about it. You still got a couple of days as we tape this interview. You won't play until Sunday. How itchy are the girls to get that next game in line?
Well, I think they probably would have preferred to play it right after we finished on last Saturday night. But, we just want to keep them focused, not go too hard, leading up and build slowly as we head toward the weekend.
Well, here's the situation for Duxbury. On Sunday at the Garden, I think it's in the morning?
11 o'clock, yes.
11 o'clock face-off at the TD Garden. They'll go up against Falmouth. Not only is Falmouth a familiar opponent, you faced them twice this year, but you had a big game with them in last year's state championship matchup.
Yes. All three of those games were a battle, and we expect the same come Sunday. We know both teams know each other very well. They were responsible for our first loss this year, and only loss, and same thing with them. We're the only one to knock them off, so it should be quite a game.
How is it, though, for a coach? Obviously, especially with a game like hockey, it can be a bounce of the puck. It's not like football saying if the linemen do this or if the running backs do this. This is a tricky type of sport, so to speak, that, you play the bounces, you play the puck. You know what I'm saying?
Well, you create opportunities for yourself, and, hopefully the pucks bounce your way. You do need a little bit of luck. But if you're prepared and ready to go and you focus on the fundamentals, most of the time things will turn out the way you want them to.
I know you and I have visited a couple of times already this season. I've asked you similar questions or repeated questions, so I'll say it to you again. Now that you're this close to another state championship, how would you characterize this year's group of girls?
Just hardworking, enthusiastic, just high energy all the way. They came to practice every day, ready to work, and before those games, they get mentally prepared, and it's just a terrific group of kids to work with, and I've always loved all my teams, but this is a very special team this year.
Well, let's talk about it. When you have such a great tradition that you can be so proud of and put your signature on, friend, how about it? These don't want to be the girls to lose. I mean, there's a little bit of a streak going here, back-to-back state championships, facing a familiar opponent. There's a lot at stake for these girls in the form of pride.
Right, and we want to make sure that the girls are just thinking forward. Just make sure you're focused on the task at hand. Doesn't matter what happened last week, last year, yesterday. It's all about being ready to go when the puck drops on Sunday.
Well, it's really tough to put you in this position, but I'll ask you the question. I mean, one game doesn't make a season. You've had so much success all year long, but let's just say if you don't win against Falmouth on Sunday, this shouldn't be considered a lost season, should it?
I'm proud of my girls regardless. They give me everything that they have. As I said, whether it's a practice, whether it's a game, they don't take shifts off. They don't take practice drills off. So, I'll be proud of them regardless. But I know they'll be ready to go come Sunday.
Sure, back-to-back state championships and looking for a third in a row, and you go up against Falmouth. What type of problems does Falmouth present for you?
They're a very deep team. They're well coached. They have a really strong goalie. And there's no love lost between the two programs. It's friendly off the ice, but once we get on the ice, it's time to go. So they're just a tough, strong, battling team, and as I said, it'll be a high energy, high tempo, strong game. They're a good opponent.
How many of these girls that are part of this year's edition of the Green Dragons were part of that state championship 2 years ago? So they've realized it twice already.
We only have a handful of juniors. We have juniors and the seniors. Only 2 seniors that are still on the squad, and we've got a junior class that's a little bigger than the senior class. I believe there's 5 of them. So it's about 7 girls that are with us from that first championship 2 years ago.
Let me ask you this. I've asked other Duxbury coaches in the past with the great success the entire athletic program has had. What do you think it is for all the success, okay? Because you're talking the winter here. Here's the girls' basketball team that wins the league title. They go deep into the postseason. That takes away some athletes. You've got the girls' hockey program. That takes away potential basketball athletes. I mean, but there's success up and down, whether it's swimming, whether it's, like I mentioned, basketball and hockey.
Good athletes. I enjoy the fact that most of the girls on my team, I should say, play other sports, and that's key. Whether they're playing lacrosse or field hockey, they play together a lot, so there's a familiarity there. They're used to playing in a team, and they're competitive. We live in a town where there's a lot of emphasis that's placed on sports, and that's a good thing. But there's also a lot of emphasis placed on grades and being successful in whatever you do. So it's a credit to the families. It's a credit to we have a strength and conditioning program that a lot of the kids are involved in through the high school, and our physical education teachers do a great job, as do all the other coaches. So you don't get people that have been sitting around for 9 months out of the year for your 3-month season. You get girls that have been athletes that have been working at it nonstop. So that's a good thing.
Let's back up the clock and correct me if I'm wrong with the number. What is this, like the 13th year for girls high school hockey in Duxbury?
That's my 12th year.
All right, so 12th year. Okay, let's talk about it. What was it like that first year? You threw the pucks out there and you said, hey, we're going to start a high school hockey program. And even though it was serious and you wanted to build a winner, I mean, in your wildest dreams, if you looked ahead, could you say, let me channel all my focus. 12 years down the road, we're going to be defending state champs, and you know what? We're going to have to cut girls, and this is a very competitive program.
Well, you had to start somewhere. And, we did have some girls that were brand new to the sport. We did have some girls that had some experience. So it was a kind of a mismatch of, a lot of different abilities. But the goal was always to get to a place where people would know our program and know it to be a strong program. But we had a lot of girls that had a lot of heart back then as well. And I always see them still, and they come back and say hi, and they have good memories of it. And that's what's important to me, is that they still love the sport. They're still following us in the paper. But those trailblazers back there laid the foundation. Every girl that's ever played for my program, I'm proud of all of them. And it's nice to hear back from them, whether they're getting married or graduated from college. It's like the Duxbury hockey family, and we've tried to establish that from the beginning. It was certainly a little harder back then with the fewer amount of girls and the lower ability level, but I'm glad we've been able to kind of grow the program into what it is today.
What about the lingo and the language in hockey? And okay, 12 years ago you get started and you say to the girls, this is what I need to do. Put the puck on the heel of the stick. And they're looking at you like, what the heck's he talking about? But now I would imagine as soon as you get set for the first practice, those type of recommendations to the girls are a thing of the past.
Well, there's an expectation now. You got to be able to, contribute coming in. But and there were some growing pains back in those early days, and I certainly couldn't run the drills that I run now way back then. But there's a learning curve, and we have been able to improve the quality of the practices and just take it to that next level and continue to improve upon. Every year you look back and you say, what could I have done differently? What do I want to work on? And so it's a constant process of evaluating and improving and looking for areas that you can work on.
Well, whatever the combination is, it certainly worked for my guest this week on the program. This is Friend Weiler, the one and only coach in the history of Duxbury girls varsity hockey. Nice to put your signature on it as a two-time state champion, and now that third possible title in a row is like within a whisker. And how about for you personally? How much do you think about it? We know the girls do the skating, but when you go home, I mean, you can't do anything different, right? It's like this is what's got us to this point, but do you say, do I need to tweak this, or just throw the puck out there and they know what they're supposed to do?
No, it's constantly, as I said earlier, evaluation, tweaking, working on this couple thing, watching game tape, really, fine-tuning what's going on, and that's, again, it's a constant process, and we want to make sure we're putting the best product out there, and the girls are focused and ready to go, and maybe something that we picked up from a couple of games ago that may work later on, but we're running out of one game at a time because there is only one left, so I think the girls will be ready to go come Sunday.
Well, listen, we appreciate your time. We know you want to wrap up this Wednesday afternoon practice. We appreciate your time. We wish you good luck this weekend against Falmouth, that very familiar opponent.
Thank you very much, Carl.
You bet. All right, Friend Weiler joining us this week on the Video Sports Page, one of the few area high school teams in our 13-town viewing area, still very much alive for a high school championship. We'll continue with more of this week's edition of the Video Sports Page, so stay with us. Well, that's one of the few high school teams in our viewing area still alive. Let's talk about some youth basketball, more specifically down at South Plymouth, where they have playoffs going on Tuesday of this week, Wednesday, and again on Thursday, and they'll have their championship rounds beginning next week. Last night, meaning Wednesday, the Nuggets, the #1 seed in the 5th and 6th grade division, had a 34-25 victory. They were tied for the best regular season record, along with the Jazz. Both were 9-1. The Nuggets were led by Shane Richardson and Matt Harrington in their victory. We did pick up some highlights, however, which we'll show you now between the Jazz and the Knicks. That was the other semifinal matchup. There's the Jazz in the black. Jazz won this one going away 30-10. Sean Spiegel with the basketball and Joe Flynn led their team in scoring. They had outstanding efforts as they went up against a pesky Knicks team. Interesting, even though this playoff game had a 20-point difference, in the regular season they met twice, and both games were decided by a mere 1 point. Let's get some of the natural sound from the South Plymouth Gymnasium. All right, South Plymouth basketball games were scheduled for Thursday night in the 7th and 8th grade division, and next week they'll have all 4 championship games that'll take place at Plymouth South High School. That'll take place on Wednesday night. Well, not too long ago, I was at the TD Garden for an afternoon Bruins game, a matinee game on a Saturday against Tampa Bay. I had an opportunity to catch up with a guy who eats, sleeps, and drinks hockey, and he's been around this neck of the woods since the early 70s. Kevin Paul DuPont and I shared the microphone. Let's call on Rich behind the scenes, cue up our interview with the longtime beat writer. Okay, let's continue with this week's edition of the Video Sports Page. It's a Saturday afternoon at the Garden. The Bruins battling against Tampa Bay. I'm pleased to be joined by a guy who eats, sleeps, and drinks hockey. He's been covering the Bruins, I think, since I started watching the Bobby Orr days. This is Kevin Paul DuPont from the Boston Globe. We appreciate your time, and boy, this is your life. Hockey's your life.
No, it sure is. Yeah, I spent a lot of time in this building and the old building, of course, too. I kind of like the old building better. More atmosphere and a different feel to it, but you know, it's all hockey, so it's all good.
You've covered so many Bruin teams in the past. How would you characterize this year's group?
Well, they're very disciplined. They play a very heavy, disciplined, smart game. It's I can't say that it's the most exciting hockey I've ever seen, but you know, winning has its own beauty, so people like that. People find that exciting, but I like more flow and more scoring chances, but that's an argument or discussion we can have forever, I guess.
So does that come from the coach's philosophy or what he has to deal with?
No, I think it's really state of the art now in hockey. This guy is Claude Julien, who's a very good coach, but that is his approach. He's probably among the most conservative in the league, but it works. They won a cup with it. You see it throughout the league, and you know, for my money, it's a league that could do better by opening up the game somehow. I think there are many ways they could. First of all, start by stripping some of the equipment away from the goalie. I think that would help.
Let me ask you, how many years is it you've actually been covering the Bruins, and do I dare how many games that you could put in your own bank?
I don't know how many games, but it's been a better part of over 35 years now, pretty much on a day-to-day basis. There was a time when I started on the Red Sox beat. I was a baseball beat guy for years, concurrently with the hockey as well, but really since the late 70s, caught the tail end of Cherry, and then and here we are today.
Anybody any more colorful than Don Cherry?
Certainly not from a coaching aspect. Player aspect, he's probably won that one too. Yeah, they've had some characters here, but by and large, very good guys routinely. And I'm trying to think if there's been an out there personality that fits it, and I'm lost at the moment.
Let me ask you though, obviously the Globe is the Boston Bible for sports. You, Will McDonough, and of course Peter Gammons before he did other things.
Bob Ryan.
And
sure.
Bob Ryan and so forth. When you think about that and you think about this city with two major newspapers and so forth, how much this city has grown now with all the cable outlets and so forth, does that surprise you from when you once started?
Oh, it's amazing. The growth of the industry at large, and communications and social media, it's been astounding and has changed the job infinitely, and unfortunately has also changed the money system too. So the Globe and every major metropolitan paper in the country now has a tough time with the money and the monetization. The odd part about that, Carl, is we are read far more than we've ever been read. It goes all around the world. I'll open up my mail on Sunday morning and I'll get routinely letters from around the world, email from around the world from readers, be it Australia or New Zealand or Newfoundland. So it's out there. Unfortunately, for my industry, there's not really a way to make money from it.
Let's talk, if we can, though, people like you that have done it so long. Mike Lynch from Channel 5, Bob Lobel before they let him go, Don Gillis, and you know what I'm trying to say. People that have done it, I mean, Bob Ryan and Peter Gammons. What is it that keeps people involved so long in this specific area?
You're talking regionally or just in sports?
No, just here in this general area in sports. I mean, obviously they're good jobs, they're prime jobs, but people that latch onto something here, this is kind of like a sports mecca, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. I think the people you mentioned, and you know, that's a really good group. It's nice of you to consider me in there. I think if you stay in it a long time, it comes down to almost anything else. Is you like to work. You have a good work ethic. There's less sort of, how shall I say, psychic income in the job than people think. People think it's great being at games. They are very long days. Routinely, this is an exception today with a matinee, but on a night game, routinely, we're here anywhere from 10 to 14 hours on game day. So they're long days. There's a lot of frustration built into it. But I think, by and large, I think people get into it for different reasons. I really got into it because I like to write, but even more so I like to compete. I don't do that as much anymore because when you're not a beat guy, you don't compete on a day-to-day basis. But I can tell you, for all those years I did beat work, the real attraction was competing and trying to win.
Well, let me ask you, though, without putting you on the spot, even though you've been doing it for so many years, at what point did the aura, if it was ever there, of going in the locker rooms and seeing the big stars go behind you, and then you looked at it more like a job and a routine as opposed to the first few years, oh, there's a Bobby Orr, oh, there's a Larry, you know what I mean?
Yeah, well, I started when I was 20 years old, so that was the early 70s. And I think it does wear off, for some people more quickly than others, but I think the easiest way to explain it is as you start to get older than the athletes, it really wears off. And you find out that many of those athletes never mature from a social standpoint. A lot of them have been, and this really speaks to the more modern day athlete, many of them have been spoiled from such an early age, which I didn't see as much when I came to it in the early and mid 70s. But as you see the specialization and you watch the money come up, they're not as, shall I say, embraceable as they used to be. But back to your original question, I think it's as you out-age them, so it's a business of teenagers and 20-somethings and maybe 30-somethings, and as you pass them in 30, 40, 50, now 60, it wears off.
Well, let me ask you this. Do you find these younger athletes in any sport that you deal with aren't as much historians of the game and appreciate the histories of the game as opposed to maybe a John Havlicek did or maybe a Bobby Orr did? You know what I'm trying to say.
I think those guys, those two you mentioned did. They had a very good sense of it. I would say it's fewer today. I can't necessarily speak to percentages, but I think by and large the kids today have a very narrow view of, and this comes with age again, sort of a narrow view of their time and place and the game. The Bruins have tried to bring some of that more out. When you go in the Bruins room now, you see plaques of the players from the past. I think that helps, but I think the kids are so focused on themselves today, and that's not just in there, I think that's socially too.
Well, let me ask you this then. After this game, you and I are in the locker room. Bobby Orr walks in. Just percentage-wise, how many of those Bruins currently would look up and say, that's Bobby Orr?
That's a good question. Bobby, of course, is such an unassuming guy, so there's no sort of, there's an aura, I think, when you talk to Bobby Orr, but he has, he's got no trappings, there's sort of no entourage with him. In this room, I think probably 3 or 4 would know. Certainly Shara would know.
There you go. All right, let me ask you. I'm going to have a cookout this summer. I'm going to invite Kevin Ball DuPont, a guest here on our program, from the Globe to my house. Yeah. So I'm going to say, Kevin, bring 3 hockey guys so we can just, my friends and family can just talk hockey all day long. What personalities would be fun for people to sit around and somebody could be intrigued by having a hot dog and a Coke and talking to them?
Yeah, certainly Terry O'Reilly would be at top of the list. A terrific guy. O'Reilly and Milbury. You probably don't need anyone after that because Milbury would have everybody fighting in short order. But O'Reilly, Milbury, and another really good guy, very unassuming but very bright, and always has good things to say, Rick Middleton. Excellent perspective.
All right, before I let you sneak away, you've been covering these sports for so many years. Somebody picks up an old Boston Globe, 10, 20 years from now, you're retired. What would you like people to know when they say, oh, I found this old newspaper, there's an article about the Bruins, and it's Kevin Paul DuPont. What do you want people to know about you?
That's a great question. I think what I like more than anything is people find it easy to read, clear. You've got to be clear in what you're saying. Make it easy for them to read. I try to put some humor into it. Humor's a tricky game because what's funny to you might not be funny to me. But most of all of that, and be right. If you're not right, you're nothing. And if you're wrong enough, you're out of the business.
There you go. All right, so my last question to you, the youngsters watching my sports show say, I want to get in broadcast journalism. I want to meet all the athletes. But now with Twitter and social media and newspapers becoming a dying breed and so forth, what suggestion would you give some young kid? Because it's not like when you started.
It isn't, but and I get this question all the time. I go to colleges and high schools and talk to kids. Some of this is true. The foundation is true, which is read the whole paper. Don't get focused just on sports. Read everything. It's like, you go to high school and you talk, well, why am I taking math? Why am I taking chemistry? trust me, it all plays in somehow. Try to have a wide view, a worldly view, and not just think that this is about shooting percentages and breakout plays, batting averages. Really read the whole paper. Try to develop as widely as you can.
Oh, here's the situation for yours truly. It's always been a pleasure to pick up that Sunday Globe and read all those famous columnists who we've touched on earlier. But it's even more pleasure and so much more pride for me to be behind the microphone and spend it with one of the true veterans here in our area. We're lucky to have him. Kevin, well, I really enjoy your work, but I enjoyed visiting with you even more.
Wonderful. My pleasure, Carl. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Kevin Paul DuPont of the Boston Globe giving us about 10 of the 15 minutes in between periods 2 and 3. For that, we appreciate it. And we'll continue with more of this week's edition of the Video Sports Page, so stay with us. Okay, before we wrap up this week's edition of our program, let's congratulate Nick Levinson over at Silver Lake. He plays indoor track or participates in indoor track, and he recently set a school record in the pentathlon. Okay, he did that up at Reggie Lewis Arena, and when you participate in that, you participate in 5 different track and field events: the 55-meter hurdles, the high jump, the long jump, the shot put, and the 1,000-meter run. Okay, he finished 24th out of 115 participants. Congratulations to Nick, who set a school record over at Silver Lake. All right, we're just about out of time. We'd like to thank you for yours. A big thank you goes out to our guys behind the scenes, Rich Goulart, and of course Will McKinney, and our field videographer Tanya Harding, who tracked down that interview with, of course, Kevin Paul DuPont. I've been your host, Carl Pratt. Health and wisdom from the Video Sports Page.